Hello, my name is Bailey Henry, and I am here to present my final for ARS 494 Contemporary Issues in Curatorial Practice, instructed by Lorna. I want to apologize in advance if I sound really nasally. I have a cold that's been going around, so bear with me. I will be discussing Fred Wilson's exhibition, Mining the Museum. Fred Wilson, the curator behind Mining the Museum, created curatorial practice statements through the use of pre-existing items in the archives of the Maryland Historical Society in Baltimore, Maryland. His overarching statement of decolonization, accessibility, and positionality is the kind of crucial statement needing to be made around modern curating. This exhibition is worth discussion and critique for the sake of its controversy. Its targeted audience is still alive and well today, the Black Americans who still live with the residual facts of slavery and racism. Baltimore, historically speaking, has been incredibly important to our nation's history, serving as the seat for Congress when they feared an attack on Philadelphia during the Revolutionary War. And the nearby Fort McHenry was the inspiration behind the Star-Spangled Banner during the War of 1812. It has been maintained as a major seaport for its convenient location and was the home of the East Terminal for the first railway in America, the Baltimore and Ohio. This place, as well as many other East Coast cities, are the ultimate colonizer hubs. This is where the first recognized areas of the United States were. This is the first areas of settlement and colonies in the New World. So with that idea in mind, this town has remained a port and a large city since its conception in 1729. We also have to assume that there was major history with slavery, slave ships, and slave trade there. Baltimore's National Heritage website states that slaves were primarily used for the building of ships, farming tobacco, and construction of the aforementioned railroad. A historical marker in Maryland shows that some 30,000 slaves were sold south before the abolition of slavery in Maryland in 1864. So with this understanding of the community's history with slavery and this understanding leads to an assumption that there must be a significant amount of artifacts, good, bad, ugly. Baltimore's history is just as much Black as it is white. Elena Gonzalez in View from the Field resonates with this concept in a multitude of ways by putting true words and definitions behind Wilson's presentation in this exhibition. Gonzalez's discussions argue this uncomfortable friction, like was demonstrated in this exhibition, produce long-term effects of inclusivity. This friction, as she calls it, is like an initial battering ram that breaks the initial anxiety and eases the flow of change within museums. She also goes on to lay out definitions of equity, inclusion, diversity, accessibility. All of these are presented in Mining the Museum. Wilson's exhibition of historical artifacts is a damning one. He doesn't hold back any of the cruelty of the past. While the Eurocentric side of history still exists and has relevance, it cannot dominate accepted history displayed within museums because not only is it unfair, but it's also blatantly inaccurate for withholding information. Side chairs and armchairs, which were circa 1820 to 1890, are artifacts that most visitors would expect to see in a museum or a historical society. Beautiful chairs, handcrafted, very stately, but they were positioned so that they faced the whipping post of the Baltimore City Jail. This ended up not being displayed, but I think the pictures alone are enough, in my opinion. Then we also have metalwork here, which is dating 1793 to 1880. It is displayed here, this beautiful silver service with goblets, pitchers, and other accoutrements. Again, things that you would expect to see in this kind of situation, but they're surrounding iron slave shackles. All of the silver service items polished to beautiful high gleam, pointing towards the shackles as if they're watching it. They're placed for display to be appreciated and shown as value. But the shackles line the middle as if they were like tossed absent-mindedly. And then we also have the portrait of Henry Darnell III by Justice Kuhn, circa 1710, which is a portrait of this child, Henry, with the slave in the background wearing a dog collar with the museum's sound system playing, "Am I your brother? Am I your friend? Am I your pet?" Can you imagine the confusion of a slave child in that situation? And then there's also empty pedestals bearing the names of Benjamin Banneker, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, pioneers of the freedom of the slave, to the left of this truth trophy. On the right of the truth trophy stand 3 more pedestals bearing the busts of Henry Clay, Napoleon Bonaparte, and Andrew Jackson, 3 of the most notorious figures in colonial era history. And these pieces put together aren't to say racism this, racism that, or shame on colonizers. The point is the positioning in this exhibition to lay bare information that's poignantly left out for the sake of remaining comfortable. The simple fact of the matter is that these items are artifacts. Artifacts are items from history that hold information as to the way that life was lived, that processes were completed, and the way that work was done. So why then, if this particular subject matter is making viewers uncomfortable, why do we have no issues with the Holocaust museums in Auschwitz? Why do we have no issues discussing the lengths of the shadow that Hitler cast across Europe and into Asia? Why do we have no issues discussing a white man expressing this hatred towards Jews and allow the guilt and horror to sink in, but don't allow it in the case of slavery when the aforementioned Andrew Jackson, in his treatment of slaves and indigenous people, were Hitler's blueprint for genocide? Fred Wilson's exhibition is asking these questions. It creates accessibility to previously withheld history by presenting history that was locked away in the archives of the Maryland Historical Society. There's more. There's heaps of artifacts, quietly hidden paintings, sculptures, vessels, and archives that could be simply ingratiated into existing time periods or artistic movements. We, as the future of museum professionals, have that idea as an end goal, but exhibitions like Mining the Museum have to be necessary, that necessary battering ram that breaks the barrier of fear. Wilson uses this exhibition to very clearly display the concept of decoloniality by targeting it directly through his usage of colonial artifacts. Mining the Museum, again, is not pointing fingers to white people as a whole. It is pointing fingers at the history in our textbooks, museums, historical sites, and asking, where is my story? Wilson is demonstrating the necessity, the urgency, the positionality with this friction. He demonstrates the true inclusion of diversity. He adds nuance to the accepted history by displaying it in museums. In all honesty, it's not scary, it's just sad, the idea that this isn't more common. The fact that frustrates me and others like me is that the tools, artifacts, and the willingness is there. The demand is there, the urgency is there to push towards inclusion and to begin the work. The only question that remains is, why have we not done it yet?